will eliminate it altogether. And that dependence is roughly, we'll look at it, 2.3 million barrels a day. The projection is that when it is commercialized, when the decision is taken by the companies I've named, then the ramp-up will occur, and with everything favorable, that is world price, we would be at 2 million barrels a day, and that would be the objective of the Department of Energy in the shale process, at 2 million barrels a day. And currently we're getting 2.2 million barrels a day from the entire Middle East, 19%, that's all. Our major sources of imports are Canada and Mexico, North America. And this adds to a North American energy domestic source which minimizes and reduces foreign oil dependency with GDP benefits to the American people and price benefits. Some of the projections are that when shale is commercialized in the next 3 to 5 years, the price of crude will drop at least $5 a barrel. That's conservative. But that depends on supply and demand worldwide and the economies of the world worldwide. At this point, I want to just introduce a little New Mexican story, and that is there's been a great deal of excitement about biofuels. And as you know, in Mexico and New Mexico and Arizona, the prime base for a staple tortilla is white corn. And because of the biofuels interest, investment, U.S. farmers are beginning to turn their crops from food to fuel. And white corn has almost disappeared from the market, even though Mexico has a NAFTA quota of 460,000 tons a year. Mexico is not getting it. So the price of tortilla corn in Mexico has had people demonstrations in the street and has caused the low-income families difficulties in buying daily bread. I introduced that in contrast to the notion that we have a resource that has no impact whatsoever, zero, on food supply at all. I'll just conclude with a point about the history of this as well. When you leave here, the question is, why is there silence today in this administration on shale? There is a strategic task force for 2 years has been meeting with 5 governors, and they have recommendations. There are 2 major companies and a third, EGR, with leases moving through R&D very rapidly. A week ago, Shell has had community discussions to bring in 600 employees into the shale area. And in the Rocky Mountain slopes, that is big news. That's jobs and so forth. The perception is that something is going to happen, and something rather big. But there is a gap between the technology, the availability of the resource, the commercialization that's coming, and Washington policy. And I hope this afternoon, I've made a couple points. And the last one is this. Probably the most effective signal, apart from releasing this report, is that the President's proposal in the State of the Union, you recall, was to add 750 million barrels of oil to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve by the year 2020. I would propose a long-term contract with the shale oil producers mentioned today and others, that all of the production from 2013 in shale oil from Colorado and the Rocky Mountains to 2020 be dedicated to the SPR. Under existing law, the SPR, again the EPAC 05, can enter into a long-term purchase agreement and buy for the SPR oil. And that would be an internal oil supply. It would not be the SPR going to the world market. It would not be imported oil. And it would be a powerful incentive for the oil shale industry. It would itself reduce market risk to a phenomenally low level in this respect. And it would put the U.S. government in the forefront. The defense agency, DOD, would be the buyer, along with the SPR. And you would have an astonishing, quick, rapid commercialization result with that. So if the intention is to add to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, add to it, buy into strategic unconventional fuel produced in the United States, domestic. And that is the initial stimulus needed for the long-term development. There are some who say that 1.3 trillion barrels under market and good positive circumstances could eventually be ramped up to 10 million barrels a day. Now that is the far off highest scenario I've seen with a resource like that. At 10 million barrels a day, we are moving back toward the 1960s, close to a position where our import dependence on petroleum is becoming marginal. With that, using that number, and I say that's a remote number, far off, but but absolutely doable under the resource that exists and the technology. That would give us the following composition. We would be 80% North American at that point, with Mexico, Canada, Colorado, the oil shale, and conventional Texas, Alaska all factored in, and maybe 20% oil dependent. Reducing it from 67 to 70% oil dependent, or as oil import dependent, to that. And then there's more. But I want to stop here, and I know there's some questions, and thanks for your attention. Yes, right here.
I just want to ask a question. This is kind of personal. I work with the airlines, and if I wanted to recommend them to be able to watch this, or can they download a written transcript?
I think Heritage has the reference to that.
Okay, because I want to kind of tell the people in my company about this, because with our company going through problems and airline problems, this builds security for our airline industry.
Well, the airline industry, as I said, has been watching this, at least the Air Force, the DOD, quite clearly, and they're looking at alternative fuels. One is the potential of oil shale. All the work has been done. The J8 fuel is not only substitutable, but it's better than petroleum. And that was established in the 70s as well. And the Air Force is having a symposium, I guess, last week on alternative fuels. They're looking at everything. There's another alternative, or a unconventional fuel, called coal to liquids. But I'm not addressing that one, but that's a potential as well. Any?
Dr. Fred, I'm Ed Borchert and Company. I'm currently working in Alberta with the Canadians on the water problem. The water problem is one of the biggest problems because it takes anywhere from 2 gallons to 4 gallons to produce 1 gallon of petroleum. And it has a terrible effect on the natural environment, and many problems are coming from that. Do you have any comments on that particular problem?
That is it's quite true. The retort that I talked about, building your processing and wetting the shale, that was where the water went, was about 3 to 1. This is also cited in the RAND report, which was mildly negative